I just feel like what I noticed was like I think people are like more they're kind of like their first reaction is like this is weird. So then they're kind of like hindered by that. Like I just don't know if like someone that hasn't like spent like so much time like really immersed in these internet communities, like almost like getting brain damage from being on the internet all the time, like can really truly understand or create work about that.
Hey yo, what's good? You are here listening to the Digital Liberation Live podcast. It's Mark, your host, in the building. And on this episode, I am talking to Ada Wrong, who is a meme artist and fashion designer, who is someone who does some really interesting stuff. They identify as Asian American, and their memes talk about everything like super, super personal shit, going through like depression, but then also tackling like fashion and like fly shit. And they're super funny, super insightful memes. And so I was just like, we gotta talk. We got to make this happen. And so for anyone who remembers the Males Are Canceled interview, Ada Wrong was mentioned in that. And so Males Are Canceled mentioned Ada Wrong as one of their favorite meme creators. So I was like, yo, this only makes sense. Like we got to make this conversation happen too. So I'm glad that we finally got this one done and that it happened. It turned out really, really, really dope. Yeah, you know the deal. You know how this goes. If you like an episode, like us, rate it, subscribe. You know the deal, and you know where to find us. But I'm gonna tell you anyway. You can find me, Mark Digital, at MarkDigitalHD, and you can find us. That's Feltzine. That's the us. Whenever I say us, whenever I say we, you know what I'm saying? Feltzine. They produce this podcast. We produce this podcast, and that's at FELTZINE. Follow us everywhere where you can keep up with all the stuff that we're always doing, because we're always doing a bunch of cool shit. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the interview, and I look forward to hearing from you soon, and I hope that you can hear another one of these soon. All right, peace. The first thing I want to just kind of like ask you is like, how are you doing right now? I know you're taking like a little vacation. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm like in the middle of the desert in Tucson right now. So, and it's like really different from New York where I live. And
you live in New York. Did you grow up in New York as well?
No, I actually grew up outside Philly, but it's like not that far from New York. And I've been there, yeah. I've been there for like 6 years.
Ah, okay. And so what made you move to New York?
I moved because I was going to school at NYU.
Okay, nice. And then what did you study at NYU?
I studied computer science, and then that was my undergrad. And then after that, I did a master's at ITP, which is in NYU Tisch, and that's like a tech and art program.
Ah, okay. So that's interesting. And then so around what kind of like what point, like was it during this time that you ended up getting into like meme making at all?
Yeah, so I started in 2016 in the summer after I graduated undergrad, and I was like really clueless about what I should be doing because I did computer science for my undergrad, and it's like very technical, like not creative at all really. But that's like, so I kind of felt really lost and like unmotivated and like going through a lot of personal stuff. And so that was like a creative outlet for me. And it was also it was the summer where like all these feminist memes were like blowing up. Like I spent a lot of time like reading other people's memes, so that's also how I found out about it.
Oh, that's dope. And so like for you in that sense then, I mean, you talked about finding feminist memes. Do you consider the memes that you make to be like feminist or political or anything like that?
I mean, like, I guess I did at the time, but like looking back, I don't think that they're like like I don't define it as like I don't define myself as an activist because I don't really think I'm doing enough to be considered that. I think they're as political as like my life is. So I consider my existence political, and the memes are a reflection of that, or like all my work is a reflection of that. But yeah, I don't consider that I made them for a political purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, when you say that, I mean, I think I definitely agree with what you're saying. But I would love for you to talk about this idea of like your life kind of being like a political act. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, just like growing up and like existing in America and like as an Asian woman, like I mean, like I don't use those terms to define, like I don't see myself in that way, like just like in my head or like thinking, but that's how society sees me. So like navigating the world like that and like the labels that people put on me and like how that affects like my views on things or like my experiences through life, like everything, like every second is like um affected by politics, like an entire history of society, you know. um yeah, that's what I meant by that.
No,
Like
that
being
makes yeah.
racialized, gendered. Yeah.
No, I totally dig that. I'm always so I like I said, I totally agree. I just wanted to hear it kind of from your perspective as well, because I think that that's something that I totally identify with in all of your work is because in a lot of ways I think I feel the same way where I think I feel like I have my like I have my identity, which to me means a lot of things, right? Like I'm from New York, my family's Caribbean. I grew up in a time where everyone in my family was really into like hip hop, and like there are certain things that define me, and I think that because of that, there's a lot of what I see because of the dominant narrative where like my existence and me being comfortable with who I am in any space is sort of like an act of rebellion in a way, but at the same time like I don't feel like I have this like chip on my shoulder or some shit. Like I don't know. Like I'm not like angry at anyone else's existence. I don't care really. I think that's more of the thing too. Is like I don't really give a fuck, but sort of not giving a fuck when the mainstream or dominant narrative wants you to like kind of like chill out with who you are feels like a really defiant or like rebellious act within itself sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Like like I'm aware of like my family's culture and like the things that we do, but I don't exactly like every second in my head, like in my internal monologue, I'm not like defining myself by these like I guess like words that I feel like society has put on me almost, you know, like yeah.
Well, no, that's super interesting. I mean, do you feel like you having the computer science and like this art and technology background that you have, in a way, like do you feel like you're using a lot of the things that you learned at NYU in your work today now, or do you feel like this is something that's totally separate from that experience?
Um I definitely use like coding and like things I do now. And like for making like store websites, it's like I already know how to do coding. And I guess like learning to program more has like influenced my way of thinking. I don't think I had to have gone to school for it or gone to NYU either, other than being able to move to New York because of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then like it's funny because like the master's program I did is like very into a lot of it is about like similar to things that we talk about on Instagram all the time, like in our own free time. Like a lot of the classes are about like online identity, like interactive art, stuff like that. But it was very strange to see it from like a different perspective. Like the people who are like almost like studying us from an outsider view, they're like outside looking in, and then I'm also like like interacting with people who are like in my personal life who are making this work. Is
So,
yeah.
yeah. Well, what do you think? So that really interests me because I think I'm so far on like the side of people who are like usually creating the content and who usually like creating the culture. And I ask you this, not, I mean, just wanting to know kind of from someone who's experienced both sides. Do you feel like the people who are studying the culture, are getting it right and that they understand it, or do you feel like it's the opposite where they really where maybe what they're saying you don't necessarily feel is being reflected?
I just feel like what I noticed was like I think people are like more they're kind of like their first reaction is like this is weird. So then they're kind of like hindered by that. Like I just don't know if like someone that hasn't like spent like so much time like really immersed in these internet communities, like almost like getting brain damage from being on the internet all the time, like can really truly understand or create work about that. But I don't know. It just felt like it's interesting because like in that program a lot of people end up working in the art industry and like tech related art industry, but I was surprised that like people were more like not to say like oh we're special or whatever, but they were just like more normie than I expected. And like it's interesting that a lot of the work created for corporate things or like more mainstream festivals are more from that perspective.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, completely. I mean, so like, well, one big thing about what you said that I just want to say, like, I've totally seen that be true as well. Is about this idea of like, this approach of like, oh, this thing is strange or this thing is like weird. It's so interesting because even when like different kind of like universities or people who are doing research will even write or mention felt, a lot of times they do so where they kind of mention that as well, where they kind of always kind of throw us into this box of like, oh, it's also like really weird and strange. And sometimes it's more about like, I don't know, we get these kind of like weird underhanded kind of like comments that are like, oh, sometimes it's just strange for being strange. And, the art merit of it or like the aesthetic merit of it kind of suffers because they're just being strange. And it's like, I don't know, like I don't like that's not just a fact, you know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
like that's just like that's how you feel about certain aesthetics, but like that's not how everyone's interpret. I don't know. I mean, I always appreciate it in a sense of like, it's nice to be able to be like recognized in that way, and it's cool to have someone like take their time to like they could study anything, they could think about anything, or even recognize you in that way where like you're a part of that. Like I'm really appreciative of that, as an idea. Like I get it, but at the same time, I think you're really right. Like there is a certain kind of disconnect that happens there. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, like I mean like before I went to the program I've thought like I wanted to make my like take my like digital art or internet art that I'm doing now and make it more like quote like official or whatever. I thought like more academic or more professional, but now I'm just like it's like kind of whack.
No, it's
Like I
totally
don't,
wag.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I'd rather just do what I want, like even if it's not like important or whatever, or like I'm not gonna make money from it like in the more traditional like gallery way, like that's okay.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, it's interesting you say that too, because for me, I always feel like one, it's always better to make the art that you feel passionate about and that is actually like real to you. But second, like the thing about it is the reason why a lot of corporate projects are whack is exactly because of what you said. They really don't hire the right people. They just hire people who have like certain credentials or, like as you were kind of saying, they come from like a select group of schools. Like, but like it's the truth is like the fire, like the dopest shit is you're gonna come from people who are doing something different, who are thinking like outside the box with their shit. And it's like, oh, okay, like but like hardly enough do they get like asked to do these sort of projects, and like the few times that it happens in history, those are like the groundbreaking, like really cool projects that people remember forever. So I think that's sort of the unfortunate thing about it is it's not the creative's fault at all. It's actually the fact that a lot of these people who have the jobs where they can make this shit happen, they're a lot of times they're just kind of lazy, or they just have too much shit to do. I mean, like there's just so much to it. It's just, I think you're kind of right. It's usually not like the right people who necessarily like get commissioned to do like the dopest shit.
Yeah, yeah. And that's also like one of the good things that happen. Like you said, one of the rare occurrences is like watching Bottom Text. Like I'm so
Yeah.
proud of them that they got Adult Swim and like to give them a platform.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah, no. That's like, I honestly think that show, I think Bottom Text in a lot of ways is going to be something that like generations from now, like the kids who are like really dope are all going to be like, yo, remember Bottom Text? You know what I'm saying? Like, even if it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I hope it's around like forever, but like, I just say that like, it's like, I don't know, like Rocco's Modern Life or some shit. You know what I'm saying? Like Cat Dog and like all them crazy shits. I think it's just gonna be like a moment where people were like, "Yo, if you became like a dope person later, you were definitely like up on that." I think it's dope.
Yeah, yeah.
So speaking of like Bottom Text, for instance, so like because we touched upon it a little bit, we kind of touched upon like the time when it happened, but I want to talk more about like one, like the start of when you were making memes, like you know, like you kind of like caught on with like you know a certain movement in time where you were like really inspired by stuff. But when did you feel like you kind of like started to have your voice as a meme creator, and then like when you felt like people were responding to your work as well?
I guess like towards the end of 2016 and like 2017 mostly. I think I was most active during then. And like I started because I was like during that time, like accounts like Goth Shakira and like Scariest Bug Ever were super like I guess it felt like really fresh and like new, and like everybody was like the trend then was to tell like write like really long memes, like very and also very personal, like narrative driven memes. And
Okay.
I guess I I liked that because at the time because I just like to tell stories more so. I think a lot of people approach memes in different ways, right? Like comedy or like graphic design. And for me, I think it was more about like telling stories, and that's why um the ones that I'm most proud of are more just like really specific and like personal. Like I would use like screenshots from my own messages or like stuff like that. And yeah, I think that's what I'm more known for too.
So, like, because there's something that I noticed as well is I think your memes in a lot of ways like feel ultra personal. I kind of like I guess for me, one of the things that I kind of am interested in there is like, how do you kind of balance that? Because I mean, like, do you feel comfortable kind of like being like, you know, very, I guess like out there, like kind of like this like super open book with this medium, I think, versus like, you know, a lot of people that I talk to, or even a lot of the work that I do is like we end up making like some piece using 3D art. And even if we turn that into a meme later, it's usually starting from this place of like, I don't know, this sort of like disconnect because we make like this, you know, 3D object or something like that. But as you said, I mean, you're literally using like screenshots from your life, and then you're putting them up on these like very like public platforms. I don't know, what is that like for you, and do you ever kind of feel like, oh wow, yeah, maybe I went too far like with this one?
Yeah. So like I guess what drew me to it was like you said, like the contrast of putting something so personal in such a public space that it's almost like embarrassing to do so. Like and also there's also was like a trend at the time of like women sharing like really personal stories on Instagram, like with selfies or whatever. Like and I was kind of like emulating them in a way. And so that's why I started doing that. But I guess like I don't really make personal memes anymore, and I'm almost afraid to, because I put myself out on Instagram so much that like I feel almost paranoid. Like every time I post, like someone's gonna write something negative because of all of the responses I got through like the course of like 2 years. Like obviously there's positive responses too, but I feel like my brain almost was like conditioned to like like fear that people are gonna say something negative because it's happened so much.
Okay, so that, and that's something I was interested to kind of like dive into a little bit too. Like, I feel like there's so many people who like love and connect with what you're doing so much, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of like I'm not shocked because of course like I know that this stuff happens on the internet, but I'm like actually really surprised to hear that people kind of approach you with like honestly like any negativity at all, especially I think considering the kind of work that you do.
I really think like the year like 2016, 2017 was such like a stressful time period on the internet.
Mm.
Um like a lot of like white nationalists people were like blowing up like everything on Instagram. That at least that's what it felt like. And like like the time during the election and like right after. Yeah, I feel like that most of the responses I got that were negative are either from like if I just like mention like the word white or like white people,
Mm.
like somebody would just like get mad, like very reactionary, or also from like Asian or like Chinese people, because I would make memes like making fun of Chinese men or Asian guys, and they would also get mad.
I see.
So
I
like
see.
I'm just like I don't even want to like touch these topics anymore with like a 10-foot pole, because I'm like it's not worth it, because in the end like what I say doesn't even matter. It's like people
Mm-hmm.
get entertained, but it's not like me making this thing is like changing anything. So I'm just like it's not worth it for all of us. And also I feel bad for my followers who just want to look at a meme and then they have to see all this like racist stuff in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially because like I don't know, like, and this is so interesting to honestly like to hear or even consider. But I feel like in a lot of ways, your work now, I mean, I think especially like recently, especially like in your tweets and in your memes, I think you do end up kind of bringing these things up. Maybe they're in like a. 'Cause I'm trying to think back to your work before, but I mean, maybe it's in more of like a. I guess more subtle way, but I still feel like you make like these very bold statements in your pieces. Are you now at a point where you're just trying to be like fuck it, if it happens it's gonna happen? Are you just like keeping your finger on like the block and like delete button? Like how are you kind of like managing that today?
Yeah, I guess I'm just like whatever. Because I always say like I'm gonna stop, like I'm gonna not be like not like get a reaction on people anymore, but then I'm just like whatever. Like this like um I'm just like I just think it's like funny. Sometimes like before I would be like, wouldn't it be funny if I said this? And then like all the consequences started happening and now I'm just like it's still kind of funny.
I dig it. I dig it. It's like that thing where like you're always afraid of being booed until you get booed and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Like it's fine.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I dig that. I dig that. No, okay, so that's really cool. And then all right, one thing I want to make sure that we talk about is also your love for fashion, because I know you're always talking about like clothes and like brands, and one thing that I just want to get into with you is just to kind of talk about that for a little bit. So can you talk to me about, because I mean like I know like there are also like brands and like these kind of like cultural themes and trends that also that pop up in your work and that you make fun of and that you call out. So yeah, can you kind of talk to me about that a little bit as well, and the kind of like the ways that you're kind of influenced by like fashion and streetwear and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've always just been obsessed with fashion. like my whole life. And so that's just like one of my main interests.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess like I moving to New York, like everyone's more fashion conscious there than where I grew up, which like I never even saw designer clothes growing up because everyone wore sweatpants. And like so that was like a huge thing. And like also during the time when I was making memes, I worked at a fashion studio. So like
Oh,
that made
okay,
me
okay.
more like I guess like more conscious of it and like the culture around it on the internet and in New York.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um
And I would assume that
yeah.
also like working in a studio, you're also like a creative and a designer, like that had to have just like some impact on, I mean, just even subconsciously in the ways that like you were just even approaching like any visual medium that you were working on.
Yeah, so like I was working in production, so at that place I wasn't really allowed to like have any creative input, but there I did like realize that I could be hand making my own stuff, and that um led to giving me more confidence to like end up doing my own production and design later, but on a smaller scale obviously.
Yeah, but you do have kind of, you have your web shop, right? Like with
Mhm.
everything that you learn and how to do like physically with making your own clothes, learning how to code, like all this stuff. Now you have your own web shop you're doing. So can you talk to me about your brand and kind of like the concept behind it and like what it is?
Yeah, so with um the glasses that I make on J-Dong, I guess like that just started by chance purely because I was learning how to use a laser cutter at school. And like also at the time I was really obsessed with sunglasses. Like I wore sunglasses with every outfit. So I thought I would make my own. And I used to always wear like racing flame type stuff too. So I
I
just wanted
see.
to make something I would wear myself. And it just like because of like the internet audience I already built from like memes or just like using Twitter, it caught on online, which I'm lucky to like I guess like have all those things come together. But like now I'm in a place where I'm like trying to figure out what to do with it because I'm not sure if I feel like I have to evolve like the brand because I didn't start it with like a conceptual idea. I didn't have like a conceptual idea for the brand and then do designs. I just had this design that caught on. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like kind of like trying to like restructure, like redo like the design for it and like come up with new designs, like thinking about what kind of aesthetic I want to have in the future, what kind of materials, because I don't want to keep doing like the same like design and same materials. Mainly, I have kept doing the flame ones for so long because it takes me so much time to design one piece, and I'm also like hand making all of them at myself. So it's like once I make one design, I just like cut out all the same shapes and then make all the same things, and rather than doing like one-offs. So I'm trying to like find a good balance between like being able to make a lot of them and also like keeping up with like the trends and like season because like fashion is very seasonal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. No, thank you. And one of the things, just kind of thinking about, so for you, when people think about the brand or when they find the brand, do you want them to also kind of like have this context of you as an artist? Like, is this an extension of all of the, you know, the Ada Wrong that we know? Or for you, is this sort of like a totally different project where you wanted to take like a fresh new lens and like perspective on what you're doing with fashion?
I mean, like I guess I think of it as extension of being an artist. That's why I named it after myself, like my real name,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted it to just like evolve based on my interests and like aesthetic interests rather than like having its own um like world. But also I kept it separately because I wanted people to take it more seriously, I guess. Like I like to put humor into my work, but for um this like fashion brand, I wanted to actually like try really hard to like push myself with design and like
Mm.
creative direction with like the budget that I have.
No, that's dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's really interesting that you say that, because I think when I think about like your pieces that you create for fashion, and then like, a lot of the art that you create, like, let's just say, like, for lack of a better word, like for the internet, it does then start to feel like it. I don't know, like it kind of creates this like complete circle in a way, where it's kind of like you exploring like kind of like all sides of maybe yourself, but also just like this sort of like idea of like a way to create. I think that's really dope.
Thank you.
Yeah, no. And then so one of the things I that also stuck out to me, because I like what you said about the way that you kind of inject humor into a lot of your work. But one of the things that is, I don't know, I mean, a lot of people talk about this, especially a lot of people who are funny, is, sort of this idea of like, I don't know. We sort of try. I'm even trying to find the right way to say this, but there's this thing, right, where there's like, it seems like there's like cancel culture, and then there's like funny culture, I guess we would say. And one of the things I think for you that's really interesting is that like a lot of stuff that you talk about, like, is very progressive. But then at the same time, you also have this, I feel like, other tone to what you're talking about, where you're not like, where you're willing to talk about things, where you're willing to like also make like a joke about things, or maybe like, and that doesn't mean that you're not taking it serious. Like, you're very willing, for instance, to like talk about like mental health and like talk about the way things are being impacted, but you don't speak about them in a way where it feels like you're, necessarily like hypersensitive or something like that. And I don't know, I would just love kind of like your take or your thought on that, kind of like how you feel about the ways of like, that kind of balance that you have, where you're like super, open to like expressing yourself, but you're not like, at the same time, it's not that you're ignorant or something like that to the fact that like, there are people who are struggling, or that like representation is important, for instance. So yeah, can you kind of speak on like that?
Mhm. I guess it's like it's easy. It's like I like to joke about stuff that like I've experienced in myself, because I just deal with everything through humor almost. So like maybe it's part of that, but like I mean I won't joke or make light about situations I haven't been on, but I wouldn't be offended if somebody also experienced that and like made a joke about their own experience. I think it comes
Uh,
down to that. And
it's yeah, that feels
yeah.
real. So it's sort of like you can speak upon things if you've been through that shit, but if you haven't been through this, then you don't necessarily have the right to kind of like touch upon these things.
Yeah, like I mean, you could joke about it, but then other people like they could call you out on it.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
yeah,
No, I
that's
like
how I feel
that.
about it.
That's really dope. And so for you, kind of like one thing I just always ask, and I just ask this just because I think it's an important thing. And if you don't feel comfortable like answering this or like touching upon this at all, it's all good. But I ask this just because I find it to be helpful. But for you and a lot of the sort of, especially I think the mental health issues that you touch upon, do you have kind of like any advice for people that go through similar things, and especially people who like look up to you as a creative, and like look at you as someone who's strong, just even simply for having the ability to create through anything that you may be going through? Do you have kind of like any advice for people who are just kind of like maybe going through like their own cycles and stuff like that?
Hmm. I guess just like find the thing that makes you feel at peace. At least for me, like I feel like I'm mentally unstable. I don't know for sure, but like despite everything and like even being diagnosed and stuff, like I feel like very at peace or stable when I'm creating stuff. Almost like I'm not worried about anything or like overthinking anything. And like I didn't know that for so long because I wasn't doing anything creative or like anything that I truly enjoyed because I was worried about like, oh, it's not profitable or like I have to give it up, blah blah blah. But like just like discovering that I can do this, it really helped me a lot. And like that's pretty much like the only thing I'm like hanging on to right now. Like just because I have that, I feel like it'll be okay.
And so is that kind of same like sense what inspires you to just kind of like continue to make like all this different stuff from like fashion to even like memes to like just even being a designer yourself, just kind of like, is that like what pushes you through?
Yeah, I mean like I always like find new hobbies even if I'm not like posting it or monetizing it. I just realized like this year like I just like to do crafts. I just like to do hand making stuff. And like I did do that a lot as a kid, but I didn't for like almost like 10 years and now I'm just like rediscovering it and realizing like that's just what I like to do.
That's dope. So what's that hobby that you picked up that we don't know about because you haven't shared it online?
Um I really want to customize Blythe dolls. I did tweet about this, but like I was really obsessed with Blythe dolls in middle school. These are like these Japanese plastic dolls that they took a design from, I think it's a British doll from the 60s, but then they started to produce them again in Japan in the 90s. And they kind of look like Chucky. But there's like a huge like hobbyist community where they customize them, and I never did it because was like $130 for one. But recently, I discovered that you can buy like fake ones on AliExpress for like $20, and they're even better than the original. And like I'm just like so tempted to like start doing this.
Nah, that's dope. That's dope. And no, that's really dope. And so for you, I mean, like even I think it's so interesting because like we kind of touched upon it a little bit in the beginning, but it does seem like in a lot of your work, you do kind of like reference, like having like parents who are like foreign and like kind of just having this, like yeah, like being a child of like immigrants and just like having like all these experiences that kind of tie you back to like the like the larger like Asian diaspora. And so like for you, do you feel like, I mean, a lot of people talk about this in a lot of ways, like people like reference a lot of things that are happening like in film right now where like Hollywood or whatever, like the mainstream in a lot of ways is seeing like Asian Americans especially like in a different light. I don't know, like for you, like what do you think about like that sort of shit? Because I think like you also tap into it in a way that is like it's very funny because you also like, I think what you mentioned a lot with your humor, like you kind of like turn it in on yourself and kind of like make fun of things a lot as well. But do you kind of feel like there's like any difference between like now and kind of like the approach to like these sort of topics, especially as they deal with like Asian culture and Asian American culture, maybe than they've kind of been in the past, or has it kind of like been around and like maybe it's just more obvious because of the internet? I would love to know your thoughts about that type of stuff and how you feel about these types of like films and shit like that.
Yeah, I mean like I guess when I started making memes, I was like also approaching it from like I want to make content that I wish I could have like seen. Like there's not that many like Chinese American not just memes but like stories being told, I guess at the time I thought.
Yeah.
And I mean now I don't think there's that issue as much, though there's still I haven't really like read anything that I was like, wow, this is like my experience, but maybe that's okay, like we don't need that. And like since then, like I guess like there's that whole like crazy rich Asians thing, though I don't think anybody from most like Chinese diaspora really related to that on any level, just by the nature of the story.
Yeah.
Except for my friend from high school, like she actually ended up like dating this guy who's this really rich guy from Hong Kong. But
that's wild.
That was like, I'm like, okay, like it actually is representation for her.
You like one of the out of everybody, she probably needs representation like the least, which is why this is just also hilarious. But I guess that's kind of like what I mean, that's kind of what happens in mainstream films as well. So I mean, that's not too bad on its own. No, I mean, yeah. No, please keep going.
I just feel like the liberal Asian representation thing has like now become like a meme in itself, and like I mean rightfully so. Like I feel like what did we get out of all this? Like did it really like help anyone like materially? And like all we got, like the biggest thing we got out of it is like Andrew Yang, which I don't support. So like I don't know. Yeah.
No, I mean that makes a lot of sense, and I think like in a lot of ways, right? Like, I think this is where which one of the things I appreciate so much about you is I think like you're very much so like someone who's willing to kind of like think individually, and I just think it's so funny because we live in this time where people would say like, well, like how can you be an Asian woman, from New York who works in technology, right? Like you have these degrees in technology. Like how could you not support Andrew Yang? And it's like, no, like I can just think for myself and I don't have to kind of like follow these, like, I don't know, like it's so weird. Like I grew up a liberal and I always kind of had this idea that, oh, we're the ones who are about free speech. We're the ones who are open-minded enough and can like accept that people have like differences and they're complex. And now one of the things that kind of scares me a little bit is it feels like in a lot of ways, like the liberals and the Democrats and the left are the ones who are kind of like wanting to force people into these ideas, like maybe like the most, which is just kind of like a little scary.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But I also think like maybe I feel like now like because every single soundbite could be like replayed forever on any platform, like people or like your tweets are saved forever, like people are very pressured to be like perfect, not in like that fits their groups of ideals. Like on leftist Twitter, like if your quote like take isn't like more correct to like everyone around you, like you're afraid of like, I guess like I don't know what could happen really, like losing followers. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, for some people, yeah. No, please go. I mean, they'll take away your whole life. Like, I mean, they'll just be like, oh, you can't work or you can't be a politician. But I think that's one of the best things about being a creative is like, unless you go off the deep end and do like some like fucked up shit, like you're pretty much gonna be fine, like if you hold, I mean I hope, but if you hold like pretty like neutral at the very least like neutral opinions on shit, like people will kind of let creatives get away with a lot more than politicians. I hope, at least.
Yeah, I mean like I follow a bunch of people, like I don't see the difference. I feel like the only difference between me and like maybe some other people is like I don't feel like I have to agree with everything, and I don't feel like everyone has to agree with me. And like I follow some people that I don't always agree with, but I'm also learning from what they say too. So I could go in like different directions. Like I want to learn more about their perspectives even if I don't agree with it now, and then maybe later I will like learn more about their perspective and maybe I will agree with them, maybe I won't. And like same with when I'm tweeting, like I know like people do like say like they don't agree with me sometimes, and I'm not like offended and I don't like delete their comment or whatever. Like yeah, like I think it's fine. We don't all have to like agree exactly, and we can learn from each other.
Well, no, I mean I think that's super interesting, and I think that's like super true, and I think enough of that doesn't happen now. Like I always like on Twitter, like I always like and end up sometimes retweeting as well, like the craziest shit. Like a lot of times it's not even stuff that I agree with at all. It's just I just find it so ridiculous that this exists that I just have to like save it. And I'm like, yo, like I just need to come back to this. Like, because sometimes I'll just go back and like look at shit I liked throughout like the last week, and I'm like, dude, that's hilarious. And sometimes it's like somebody who's like a racist who says some like ridiculous shit about like black people, and I just think it's like so ridiculous that someone says it, and I'll like it, and then I'll like follow that person because I'm like, I just need to understand like how you live, like like what is this that causes you to even like send these tweets out. And I think in a lot of ways, like sometimes I get nervous because I'm like, shit, dude, somebody's gonna look through my likes and my follows and they're gonna think I'm like some like alt-right like monster, and I'm like, I promise I'm not. It's just that like I don't mind, like I can see these things and you know be like, I don't agree with this, like this is fine, but like someone believes this ridiculous shit, like it exists, and I just want to know like what the fuck are they talking about. And that's one of my favorite parts about the internet, to be honest, is like how much I can get like a totally different perspective on mine and just be like, shit, like they're really just posting all this shit up here.
Yeah, that's like me when I go on r/Asian masculinity and I read some of the stuff that they're posting.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's exactly like that. Okay, please tell me more about that experience and tell us what our Asian masculinity is, because now I'm just actually like super intrigued by this.
I mean, I guess it's like a weird like intersection between Asian American like rights kind of like people and also like people who are kind of leaning towards like men's rights activists. Like there are a lot of them are from like privileged like immigrant backgrounds, and all they like maybe they went to like good colleges and stuff like that, but mainly their whole thing is focused on how like Asian men aren't like perceived as desirable enough in like Western society. And like the craziest thing I found was like that subreddit funded a porn for this Asian male porn actor, and I guess like a white porn actress. They like funded this porn to be made. I was like, wow, they like really pulled together their resources. They like did something, but also I'm just like, what?
Yeah, no, that's wild. I mean, I'm one of these people. Like, first of all, that's ridiculous. Second of all, I'm one of these people. Like, I hate the fact that there's even this whole thing. Like, people online are like, yo, like, let's ban porn. Like, let's ban. And I think that's so like that's just so dangerous for our society if there's no porn at all. But also, I find it, I don't know, I find it extremely just like telling that that this group pulled all their resources together to make like interracial porn. And then especially what they're standing for. And I imagine like there's probably a lot of like Asian woman bashing like in this like subreddit. I mean, I feel like that I'm just imagining they're probably like a lot of complaining about like Asian women dating outside of like their race. Oh my God, the hypocrisy of the menemist online communities are like, I don't know, it just continues to be mind blowing. This is incredible.
And like, it's just like funny because like I'm sure there's a lot of Asian porn out there from like Japan or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's no like lack of like porn with Asian men in it, but they just needed one with like an Asian man and a white woman that they funded. I don't know.
No, facts.
It's just like really fun. It's like so like, I mean, it's like, wow, like they did more than I ever did. Like I never organized enough people to like fund a project, so like good, and organize like a crew and stuff like that, so like good on them, but also like what?
I mean, shit. I mean, dude, like what? Like how many? I feel like 90% of people who even like look at porn never even pay for it once in their life, and
right?
These people are like paying for it up front. That's wild.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
shit. Okay. Yeah, and so like like when you check something like that out, kind of like what are you thinking? Like does it ever actually like get you upset, or do you just end up like laughing and then quoting them and you're like for like meme material later?
I mean, like, I feel like it almost like sucks me in. I'm like spending so much time, like, I feel like I'm researching them or like doing field research or whatever. But after a
Yeah.
while, I'm like, wow, my brain feels like it's been fried. Like, I need to like go outside and like not look at this for like half a year.
Dude, I know what you mean. Have you ever heard of these people called groypers? Have you ever heard of this shit?
No.
Yo,
What are
is
they?
it? Oh my god, this is what did this to my brain recently. So, do you know? So, there's this guy who's like this alt right like media personality. His name is Nick Fuentes. Um, he's like a complete dickhead. Like he just first of all he's like Hispanic, Latinx. Sorry, sorry, I'm choking. I'm choking on my own linguistic fuck up just now. Anyway, so Nick Fuentes is like this, but the thing is, like, he would never call himself Latinx because he's like a total racist, sexist, misogynistic, just asshole. And it's weird because he's Latinx, but he's like a huge racist and like anti-immigrant person. It's wild. Anyway, there's this group of people who are like dedicated followers to him, and they call themselves groypers. And what they do is they actually go to like all these other like hella right wing, hella like conservative, like I guess like discussions and like conferences and shit like that, and they'll like just ask them like hella questions about like do they support Israel, like all of these like hella like controversial questions just to like fuck them up, and they just like troll the fuck out of like all these other right wing people to get them to be like even more extreme right wing. And it's like, dude, what the fuck, like and just like their logo is Pepe, but it's like a fat Pepe. And I don't know. I just spent like 2 days researching them, and I was just like, dude, I can't live in this shit anymore. Like, y'all are fucking driving me crazy because I just couldn't understand how like a whole racist like alt right movement could be led by like this dude who is like clearly like basically like like Latin for sure. Like this guy's not like definitely not like fully white but it was just kind of like mind blowing, and it just kind of was one of those moments that reminded me like, oh yeah, the internet doesn't make sense today, so the more you try to make sense out of it, the more like you're just gonna go crazy. And I think it goes back to your artistic idea of just making whatever the fuck you want and feeling free. That kind of seems like the only thing that works.
Yeah. And maybe like I guess like the internet obviously makes you more and more extreme in whatever direction. So like in the end, like it makes sense to them in some way, whatever happened on the way to that point.
Well, part of it too, and this is my opinion,
Yeah.
is like I think that just because of just even getting back to our conversation, I think a lot of these people are just trolling. And I just think like they can't, like they don't know how to really make like a funny meme. They don't know how to actually like even really express themselves online. So I think they just attach onto these like crazy ass movements, and that's their way of like trolling and making a meme. Like I don't think all these people mean that shit. Like I think in a lot of ways, like even the attacks that you get, like I think a lot of them, well, not even a lot of them, none of them are about you personally, right? Like you're like, I mean, like you're not like this like ridiculous looking person. You're not like really saying anything that's gonna offend anyone or like impact their lives in a way that's gonna be negative, or like you're a very like aware person who has like empathy. Like you're not like trying to hurt. You're still not doing anything. Even if you're saying something that might be provocative, you're not saying anything. You're not using like weaponized language. Like, and so it's like anything that you even get attacked in, it's just a part of these people who are hopping on this movement who like they don't. That's all they can do. Like they're just like, oh, okay, like I want to have fun online. I'm just the only way I know how to do it is to be like this extreme radical. But I really don't think they genuinely feel like any of this shit at all.
Like, you think they just want to be like a part of something?
I think they want to, yeah, and I think they want to be a part of something, and I think like what you said about the internet, I think it forces extremes. So the more you spend online, and then you get rewarded for being extreme. So like if I'm just like, yo, nice, this meme is funny, or like nice picture, no one cares at all. But if I say some extra shit like, yo, this is like the baddest fucking picture I ever seen on the fucking world, and I have like 100 fire emojis, people are gonna fuck with that. But then if I'm just like hella disrespectful to you, even if people are mad and they're like, yo, get this guy the fuck out of here, or they whatever they do, like that's still it's still impact, right? Like it's still like you're still getting reactions. So just like unbiasedly, you're moving the needle either way. So I think people have just figured out like I have to be an extreme asshole, or I have to just be like the nicest fucking like person ever, like super positive, like people who just like be like wake up every day and do like them ultra stupid ass positivity videos. Well, I mean, I guess they're not stupid. I'm telling about myself saying that, but I think that like I think you either need to be that, like you either need to be like the most uplifting motherfucker, or you need to be the person that just like tears everybody down. And I think people kind of just like choose what it is from there. I think like racism is like an easy thing to play. Sexism is an easy thing to play. And it gets people like upset. So it's like, oh, okay, great. Like if you're mad or if you're either way, you're replying to what I'm saying. So I think that's like a lot of it for people, to be honest.
Yeah, and like that actually like ties into what I've been thinking about recently. Like, I mean, like people have been writing about how these platforms they survive through like outrage clicks to get like views and stuff.
Yeah.
So like how can we build community or have like conversations on these platforms when they inherently want us to like tear each other apart? You know, like I noticed on Twitter, like if they want to be educational, they don't word it like in a neutral stance. They word it like they write something and they're like, but nobody's talking about that though, or they write like, oh, like you aren't ready to hear this, like stuff that kind of already makes the viewer kind of feel like irritated, or just like positioning themselves as if they're better than, and then that will get more responses. Like we're kind of trained to like talk in this way now to each other.
Oh, that's super interesting. And then all right, so like for instance, like for you as like a creative, what do you do with that, right? Because like you can like, I think that's an extremely good point. Like, do you take those kind of like, I guess like understandings of like humans and like what we're doing now and like the language we're using on social media, do you take that and then like use that to your advantage? Or I don't know, like is that like is that evil? I don't think anything is objectively evil or good, but I think that's super interesting. But like I don't know, like for you in your process, like when you notice something like that, do you use that sort of stuff, or do you like play with it as like a trope? I think that's just like such a good like observation to pick up. And I also think this is what makes people who are like meme artists and creatives like very similar to comedians. And in a lot of ways, like I think y'all are like and I just have a super high respect for comedians and comedy as an art form. And I think the thing that both of these mediums share is that you all have this ability to like look at what's happening in society and then like kind of put like a mirror to our face and be like look at how ridiculous you're acting. I don't know, do you kind of see your work in that way in any sense?
I mean, like I've definitely used it as a trope, like where like I guess like I set up the joke by pretending like I'm better than whoever's reading it, but like I don't actually think that. And like I like to exaggerate to the point where it's like self-deprecating.
I see.
But like I mean, I've just realized this recently about like Twitter, and I actually like I don't like it at all, and I feel like I'm getting stressed out by like being on Twitter and like seeing how people like talk to each other about like in the end like it might be like two people almost agree or they want to like have like the same aspirations and like educate themselves about some topic, but the way that the conversation flows is just like so like counterproductive to everyone's like actual goal. And like I've been thinking about it recently, like I don't like Facebook who runs Instagram and like or Twitter either. Like I wish there was some other like um creative platform that was operated differently and like yeah, moderated differently.
So, what do you not like? What just because I mean, I totally understand your thoughts on Twitter. What do you not like about like Instagram in particular? I'm just kind of interested to know.
I mean, like, the main thing is like, probably gonna write a post about this too because I've been thinking about it a lot. I really don't like how Facebook has this huge, almost like disdain for its content creators. Like, obviously, like Mark Zuckerberg, I think he looks down on everybody else. Like we're all stupid, and like that's reflected in his platform and like how it's designed and how it's run. Like if they cared about content creators, why is there no way to monetize your content on the platform? You know, the only reason why people go on Instagram is because of people posting stuff. Yet there's not really a way for you to make money from it.
Not
And
only
like
is
he
there,
just yeah. Go ahead.
no. Well, I was gonna say not only is there not a way to make money from it, like off your post directly, it's hard as shit to get a store going. Like I've applied for several different like Instagram shops, all of them from like very legit like brands and like institutions, and like the hoops you have to jump through to get that shit done. It's like, oh, okay, like if you're not a partner of Instagram and like super connected to this shit, you can't even really get in. Like I'm also thrown off by I think and I mean, which is whatever, like there's certain things you can't even do, which it's not I mean, it's not whatever, but there's a lot of things you can't even do on Instagram, like as far as features are concerned, until you get past like a certain amount of followers. And a lot of these are like pretty high numbers, like 10K, 100K. Like there's a lot of shit you can't get unless you like are like, and I mean, like, what does that mean? You know, like that you don't. I don't know. Like you said, like that does show a disrespect to content creators because like not all you don't value a content creator based on like how popular they are. That's just not. I mean, that's just not like that's not culturally like advantageous to anybody. In my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, like you mean like the shopping directly on Instagram feature?
Yeah. Like the one where you like tap the post and then like the little circle like puts up the item. Like that shit is hella hard. It's not like easy. Like it takes you have to like apply. It's like days, and you're like, dude, like I like what this is not how things should be going. Like at this point in time, like if I don't know, like it's not like it's difficult to look at a fake web shop and take that shit down, right? Like y'all do that all the time. So like why is it any different if I just want to create like use Instagram to sell t-shirts, right? Like but you can't do that. Like you can't just like with our Instagram page now, right? Like if we take the Feldzine page, we can't just like post an image with an item and sell it like that. Like we would have to make like a whole new page, like don't go through all these hoops. Like it's not like a smooth thing at all. It's kind of annoying to me.
Yeah, and like for bigger brands that have that feature, it's like they don't need that extra ease to make people buy stuff because people want to buy them anyway. So like Facebook just like caters. I mean, it's just like letting the people who are big get even bigger, you know, because they profit more off of them. And like at first I was like I posted on Instagram because I thought it was like funny or interesting to like use a mass platform for like what it's not intended, like because you're supposed to like post like I guess like influencer style photos on this platform. and like I thought it was like funny to use it for what it wasn't intended, like posting like stuff that was so personal. But now I'm just like, I feel like we should like ask for more from like the some place that we're like spending so much time and effort on.
Yeah, I mean, well, the whole thing is like, I think part of the thing that started to also just really kind of get to me too is like these companies have basically set it up where, I mean, as ridiculous as it may sound, like through design, like literally the way they design these and with the way that they market, with the way that they like kind of just buy things out, pay people off, and just like they've made it where they are the internet, right? Like you can't get an art project out, you can't get people to come to an event, you can't do anything if you're not using Instagram and Twitter, especially now for like our generation. Like you can't, I mean, people fuck with like Facebook events, all right, but that's still like that world. Like you can't just put up a blog post and say, hey, come to this event 2 weeks from now and expect anybody's going to show up. Like you have to use these platforms now, and I think that's something that's kind of like alarming, right? Like you went from kind of like being like, hey, I'm going to use this platform to do like some kind of like low key, like subversive shit. And then now, like, you kind of like need that platform in a way to like do anything you want to do, like sell clothes, whatever. Like you got to be on like the gram so people can even see the clothes.
Yeah, totally.
So
and like
no, please. No.
I'm just saying like I'm just saying my only hope is like maybe as people become more like tech literate and like aware of these things, and like they'll be more interested in making their own platforms or like using alternative like platforms, or like, yeah, that's my only hope.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm like, yo, let's figure it out. Like we have to find alternatives soon. All right, so I want to, because I know you're, like you're away right now. I want to like have you get back to like the desert, and like I hope it's like warm out there, and kind of like enjoying your time there. So what I want to do is I want to ask you like two more like pretty quick questions, but one of them, the first one is actually, I want to go back a little bit, and it's a question that kind of slipped when just because as we were talking, but I definitely still want to get your perspective on this. One of the things with your memes being so personal, and with you just kind of being out there and like the stuff you do on Twitter, how do you kind of handle that? Once again, like with your personal life, be that with like your family, people you went to school with, people who knew you before maybe you were like making memes and like expressing yourself like so clearly and boldly. I also say this because like for me as an artist, I think, like as I grew older, I grew more into myself, and I definitely started to express things that were like more radically like me than like ever before. Like the older I became and like the more art I made and like the more events I did, shit like that. So for you and someone who's like so personal with their stuff, how do you kind of keep that balance between like the way like people might react to things you do online and like kind of like, like the online persona that you have, but then also like your personal life? How do you kind of balance those two?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's definitely hard. It's definitely weird. I mean, my parents aren't on like English internet, so I don't have to worry about that. They only use WeChat. But for like work and like school and stuff, like I don't really talk about what I do online that much unless like someone asks me, and then I'm like, yeah, that's me. It's funny because like in school, like I made like a VR project referencing my meme account at one point. That was like the 3D render I had of like the me in a coffin, the Supreme coffin. And like I had to present that in front of my class. And like I usually don't really talk that much in school, like in class or whatever, or like talk about my Instagram account. And I was just like suddenly like, oh yeah, I have this like account. And like I feel like people didn't know what to say. They're like, oh, okay. But like, I don't know, they're like, this is weird but cool. I don't know. After that, I realized like I don't really care because I literally just like presented my meme account in like an academic setting. So it doesn't matter.
No, I love that. And so maybe like in the past, you a little bit of like maybe like fear or nervousness around it, but like at this point, you're just like fuck it.
Yeah, especially my Twitter now, like even my old coworkers follow me on there and they didn't know I had a meme account and like I'm just like whatever.
No, word, no, I respect that. I mean, at the end of the day, you just have to live your truth. You got to be who you are. So that's cool, but it is pretty much the same account. Like there's, I mean, and I'm not asking you to expose like any private accounts or anything you have, but you pretty much like you mainly use the internet like with like the memes and like all that sort of stuff, like your fashion, your creativity. That's like the main way you're on the internet. It's not like this is like the kind of like, you know, lesser one you use and you have a more popular, not popular, but like maybe like a more consistent like personal one that you kind of present to other people. Like you lead with like this when someone asks you like where they can follow you.
I guess like if I meet someone in real life, I tell them my personal Instagram account, which is just like a normal one, like selfies or whatever.
Okay.
And like, I mean, the one part of the internet that I don't really like, people that follow me for memes don't really know about, mainly because they're not interested, is like that I play games and like and like I try to talk to people online about games, but I don't hide it. It's mainly because my followers don't care about games.
That's dope. That's dope. So like, so you're really into like, are you doing like live stream gaming and like stuff like that?
Yeah, like I want to get into live streaming on Twitch, but it's very hard to like transfer your audience from to a different platform, and especially because the following that I built is more like art or like fashion related. Not as much people like play games.
Yeah, no, I feel like you of all memers, like you and like a couple, like you and like your homies, like shout out to Nihilus who made the comment to ban porn and 0202. The shouts out to Nihilus. I feel like y'all and like Males or Kids, like a bunch of people, like y'all's like kind of like world, like y'all have like probably like the only meme community that probably don't fuck with like video games hard like at all, which is mad funny.
Yeah, that's so true.
Like,
that's so true.
No, so
and like my username is from a video game and nobody understand that. Like
you put me onto that. Nah, it's real because I had to look that shit up. I was like research about you for this and shit. I was like, oh shit, like that's cool. Like that's kind of ill. Like, and then I was like, yo, like I had no idea. Like, so nah, like I didn't. Yo, shouts to Niles. Niles said I don't play games. I don't play no games. I get money. So here we go. This is where we at. Nah, yo, it's crazy. I had no idea. I was like, oh shit, like that's cool. Like she took a name from a video game. That's kind of dope. Yeah, I had no idea. So
yeah, I just like weirdly that community doesn't intersect. Maybe for the better. To be honest.
That's facts. If anything, if someone puts it together, then I'm glad it's you. We're in good hands. If you know what I'm saying, if the gamer bros happen to fall over to this meme community, then fuck it. I think you're the one who deserves to lead them here. So the one thing I just want to just ask you, just like, as we wrap this up, like, thank you. This has been like so much fun talking to you and learning more about you and what you do. But as we record this on New Year's Day, I just got to ask you what's next for you and what are you looking forward to do, in this decade, in this new year, whatever, however you feel about time and the way it progresses. I just would love to know, what are you excited about coming up?
Honestly, like I had no idea what's gonna happen. I kind of like gave up on like, oh, this is my goal for the year because I can't even see like 2 months ahead. But
no, that's dope.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I like it. Yeah.
Personally, like I want to like learn how to lift weights
Oh shit.
at the gym. Because
Oh
I have
shit.
friends who are really into it, but they never got me into it. So I'm like, maybe I'll try. And,
Yo, you about to get swole.
Yeah.
It's gonna be crazy, yo. You about to be, yo. You got the meme that you created. I think you created of yourself where you was on the beach and shit. That's what your
Yeah.
shoulder's about to look like. Your shoulder's about to be
Yeah.
wide as fuck. You about to be brolic. I see the vision.
Yeah, I hope that happens.
I was just nah, it's about to happen, yo. I did an interview with Michael Green the other day, and we had talked about this, and he was like, yo, like when you make some shit in your art, that shit comes through and it happens. So that's what you did, yo. You made the art that threw that shit into existence, and now you about to start lifting weights. Oh shit, yo. This is gonna be like a talk about video games. It's gonna be like you put in the cheat code and you boosted like your strength stats. This is about to be insane.
Oh my god, I never realized that. That's so funny.
Yeah. Nah, that's how it goes. Well, I wish you best of luck. I think for someone who says that they're not planning what they do, I think that what you do comes together like really, really dope. And I love that you're expressing yourself. I love that you're also being just being so honest, and I think being like a really dope example for people about how they can really like be themselves, and just like like be true and express like who they are honestly. So thank you for that.